Welcome to the Intentional Success Podcast, where we unpack the top strategies, explore business trends, and drill down into best practices to help your live events production business grow and scale on purpose. I'm your host, Tom Stimson. In today's Intentional Success Podcast, we're going to learn about the one word you never want to use in your business. Hey, welcome to today's podcast. I'm going to start off by talking about how to handle some buyer price objections. You know the ones I'm talking about. You hear them all the time and say, oh, we don't want to pay extra if you have to outsource, or why are you more expensive than this other quote? Why are your labor rates so high? How about this? Your quote is the highest. Can you do better? Perfectly reasonable objections. Any customer could have them. Any prospect would have them. However, they tend to stop us in our tracks because we feel like we've done something wrong. And I want to talk about the thing that we probably did wrong. But before we talk about that, let's agree on three things. Number one, not every customer is right for you, right? There are going to be customers who, in spite of your best efforts, are going to be unreasonable. They're not a good fit. They're not a good match. We know this. We don't always practice it, but intellectually, we understand this, right? Not every customer is right for you. Another thing we need to agree on is that if you show the customer your math or line item pricing, you are going to get more objections. And the objections you get are going to be very specific, and they're going to be plentiful because you've given them a huge amount of ammunition. And you've pulled them away from the most important thing, which is what you're going to get done for them. And now you've got them focusing on how you're going to do it. And they're wondering maybe, well, what if we did it ourselves? Could somebody else do it for less? You've taken them away from the conversation you should be having. And the third thing we want to agree on is nothing that your so-called competitors are doing has any effect on what you are worth or what it is worth for you on any given day to win or lose a piece of business. That is completely on you. Competition is noise. I don't like conversations about the competition. They don't matter. Just because your buyer chooses to bring them up is simply a challenge to you to pull the buyer back into the right conversation. All right. So now we've got those things out of the way. Let's move a little bit forward here. How do we start dealing with some of these objectives? Oh, there's a word I'm going to talk about. I'm not there yet. Stay with me. Let's address some of these objections. For instance, you can respond to any one of a number of different ways. You be you. You choose your style. I'm a little harsh sometimes, but you can respond saying, I don't know why other companies you are looking at would quote labor at or below cost. I mean, that's not the place you want to cut corners. We hire the best folks available. Frequently, that means that they need to travel to the event. I absorb all that extra cost. We want to get the right people on the job. That's a great response to a single level objection of why your labor rates are so high. You just showed them a huge amount of value. You kind of threw your competitors under the bus, though we don't necessarily need to do that. But hey, if they're going to do it for themselves, why not help them, right? Another response about pricing. Look, dear customer, there are an infinite number of price points for what you're requesting, right? I can only make expert recommendations on how to spend your budget. You're the arbiter of what is good enough for your event. So let's talk about what you want for your event, what your budget is, so that we can optimize your spend. That takes the conversation away from price. That gets us back to where it should be, which is what is their budget and what do they hope to accomplish for the budget? They're going to have to compromise, but we can't get to that compromise until we know what the parameters are. So sometimes customers imply that maybe you don't deserve to make a profit, right? Well, of course we're making a profit. However, we are not marking up any outside resources. We are charging you for what it costs to define the need, source the supplier, manage them, and take responsibility for the outcome. Of course we add profit to that. That's an extremely valuable service that you probably don't want to do yourself. I threw that last bit in there. You probably won't say that. Another response is, honestly, we do better work. That is why our quote is higher. That means that we can use your available budget to deliver a better outcome than providers who simply focus on price. I'm not going to cut corners, okay? But it's not necessarily going to be the cheapest way of getting things done. But it will get it done the way that you want it done, which is probably more important. Right? Reframe, reframe, reframe. And then one last thing about this, people resenting the fact that you have to outsource. Look, let me explain. We don't charge you more because we outsource something. And we don't charge you less because we have it in-house. We only charge you for what the service is worth. Okay? So where it comes from, how I have to get it there, what it takes for me to do it isn't really your problem. My job is to get it done. Here's what it costs to do that regardless of the circumstances that I happen to be in on any given day. Does that help? Try some of those out. Now, let's get to the word that we never want to say. The word that will undermine everything that we just described, right? That word is markup. Markup is a very, very bad word, not just in sales. Using the word markup in your business creates a lot of unhelpful imagery that undermines your goals. When a customer hears the word markup, here's what it means to them. I'm asking the wrong company to do this for me. That's what markup means. We can get that for you. We're going to have to mark it up. Man, I guess I'm asking the wrong company to do this for me. Your job is to get the project, whatever it is, done correctly. You deserve a profit for doing that. Markup isn't profit. It's a price variation. You took an existing price and added nothing of value to it in the customer's eyes, but still raised that price. That's a markup. It's valueless. It's kind of an insult to a buyer. Customers see markup as the cost of not doing it themselves. Oh, I'm not going to do this myself. They're going to mark it up 30%. Is it worth it? Why do we even want them to have a moment where they consider that? Because what they are neglecting to see is the risk of doing it themselves. And they won't realize that risk or how much harder it's going to make the project for you to execute successfully if the client decides, oh, we don't want to pay the markup. We're going to take that back and do it ourselves. How many times has that happened to you? How well has it gone? Markup is what caused that. We've got to get away from this word. So many years ago, when I raised delivery pricing to reflect actual costs, and I'll tell you the formula that I used. That this was, I remember this the first time I presented at Infocom in 2001. I stood in front of an audience full of live events people, and I asked them what they charged for delivery, and it was $35, $50. You know, somebody said $150. Yay, applause all around. How in the world can you get that? Our customers won't pay for that. Then I asked them to calculate the cost of delivery, right? Go through it. You've got a driver in a van for 2 hours. What are they making? Oh, well, they make $15 an hour. I said, no, they don't. You're paying them $15 an hour. It's costing you $18.50. However, they're on overtime, so the cost is really $27. How much would it cost for you to run a van for a day? Well, it costs us $99. Okay, so we're adding up the cost. What's the fuel? And you delivered it and you have to go pick it up again. What's that cost? At the end of that, we got to a net cost of about $400 for a simple van delivery that we should be charging $600 for. Now, of course, everybody freaked out about all of this, right? And I said, well, great. Why don't you call a courier service and ask them what it would cost to pick that up from your place, deliver it, pick it up again, and bring it back, right? I've been telling people to charge $600 delivery minimum cost for 20 years now. It still applies. And when I did this in my own business, the business I was managing, we raised that price because we saw that we were underselling the cost of doing something that was very valuable to the customer, which is they didn't want to come pick it up. They wanted us to bring it, and they wanted us to set it up, and on and on and on and on. So when you put that to the customer, they go, oh, well, wait a minute, the guys across town will do it for $50. And I said, yes, they probably will, right? I don't need to deliver this for you. You are welcome to get somebody else to deliver it. Maybe those guys will come pick it up for you and deliver it. But this is what it costs to get this delivered. And here are the problems that it's going to make go away for you, right? And here's the things that it's not going to cost you because I already took on this responsibility. So again, it's always about reframing. We had very little pushback on that price increase because what we learned was quit showing them what it costs to deliver, just roll it all into the price. So this methodology worked for a lot of things. By not telling people what I was marking up or how much things were going to cost that we were buying and reselling, like travel, logistics, and labor, we completely changed the paradigm. We were not just providing things at cost plus markup. We were getting valuable things done. And my message to you is you don't do shows, right? You're not getting paid to do shows. You're getting paid to get shows done, which is far more valuable. Now, markup and margin are two different things. And I know you know this. If you've followed me for any time at all, you've probably heard me say this 20 times. But if you're new or you need the refresher, a 20% markup, if you rent something, if you source something for $1,000 and mark it up 20% and sell it for $1,200, you're going to get a 16.7% net margin. Your gross profit, in other words, if you mark something up by 20%, you only earn 16.7% gross profit. But it's worse than that, right? That pittance of a margin has to pay for the resources to procure that item, process the payables, receive it, incorporate it into your project. Did you even factor in the cost of delivery and return if it was a sub-rental? No, you didn't, did you? The amount of overhead cost involved to manage all of that transaction is far more than what you earned, okay? But Tom, oh, I hear it. But Tom, we don't deserve to make money on things we don't own. Who made that rule up? Look, that's the markup mindset in a nutshell. This is why we have to strike the word markup from our vocabulary. There's an emotional connection with markup in our industry that harkens back to the rental industry days, right? We're 30 years in the past. For a rental company, the product or service was the availability of the item and the fact that you owned it, right? We own the projector, therefore we earn the revenue by ownership. When we moved into full service rental production, that mindset lingered, okay? So margin is what you need to earn to manage the item you would otherwise just mark up, right? So two alternatives to replacing markup as your internal tool for pricing external things, right? The easiest but not most complete solution alternative is to learn the margin formula. So markup, if we want to mark something up 30%, we take the source price and we multiply it by 1.3. Simple. The margin formula is divide the cost by 0.7. That will add a 30% margin. A 30% margin is the same as a 43% markup. And for everything that you used to mark up, just switch to margin and use the same number. And if the customer says, well, how much are you marking this up? We're not marking this up. We're adding a 30% margin to it. And here's what that does. Or here's what that provides you. Or we can let the customer be confused about what the difference between markup and margin is and say, no, we will only work with a 30% margin. We're not going to charge you any more than that. And that's the handling fee and the processing. The fact is, margin is effective. Markup takes money off the table. So that works in the macro, but we need to start thinking about the micro. If you always start with the replacement cost of an item and add margin to each product and service based on risk, scarcity, and value, you won't be marking things up. You'll be pricing things according to their value, right? So, for instance, there are things you do that are extremely low risk, easy to source equipment, right? You can find it anywhere. Screens. It's very hard to add a lot of margin to screens. But we should expect easy to source equipment to have a 33 or 25 to 35% margin. Why? Well, how much money are you trying to make on a job? Is it 40% gross profit? If you want 40% gross profit, then make your margin 40% so you won't lower the margin every time you outsource, right? Now, a 25 to 35% margin is the same as a 33% to 51% markup, right? This is easy to store stuff, but this takes care of all the costs of getting that there, the risks that you absorb if it doesn't arrive and you have to get it somewhere else. It's the same value as providing your own equipment, which is what your price should be based on. So if you base your actual prices that you use internally, if you sell for price, on replacement cost plus margin, it's easy to outsource because the margin is already built in. Now, mid-risk items like semi-skilled labor or more critical equipment, these are mid-risk. They get a higher margin, maybe a 40% margin on semi-skilled labor, maybe a 40% margin on critical equipment. Okay, 40% margin is a 70% markup. High-risk items, skilled labor and critical labor. Highly skilled labor, your A1s, your V1s, your show callers, your stage managers. These are skilled people. They are professionals. They have to have pedigree, background, and experience. Okay, 50% margin, 100% markup. Very, very common. Critical labor, same thing, 50 to 75% margin, which is a 400% markup, 75% margin, because I have to have this one person, no other one person will do. This is extremely critical. I'd have to replace them with 3 people, or I'd have to, take a bath on the entire job because I can't get the work done. That's critical labor. That's highly valuable. Maybe you do custom work, you do fabrication, you build scenery, right? These are highly complex systems. This is a 75% margin, 400% markup. These are high risk things. If you build a sign incorrectly, you've got to build it over again. Your risk is huge. The value is very high for the customer. They can't do it for themselves. This is where value is created. Remember, you're trying to get the show done, not just do a show. Now, let's get back to those customer objections, right? When the customer comes to you and says, or responds to you, says they won't accept that high of a markup. I'm sorry, our policy is that we don't let you mark things up. Explain to them that you won't mark anything up. Instead, what you're going to do is you're going to charge them a management fee for the product or service plus a 10% handling fee for processing the financial transaction on their behalf. Take control of your profit by abandoning the entire concept of markup from your business. Learn to be a better negotiator. Learn to sell from value. It all starts with losing the word markup from your lexicon. Get rid of it. Replace it with a better understanding of margins and value. Now, I'd be honored to help you and your team become more effective at pricing and margins, which starts with losing these markup hangups. If you're interested, visit my website, trstimson.com, book an appointment. I'd love to chat with you. Love to learn more about your business. Thanks for listening. If you want to find out more about today's episode, go to trstimson.com/podcast, where you'll find the show notes, related links, and tons of other valuable resources. If you haven't already subscribed to the Intentional Success Podcast, please do so, and I'd greatly appreciate if you would rate and review the show. Also, if you think you might be a good fit to work together or want more information about the Stimson Group, I'd love to hear from you. Visit trstimson.com for more information.